Josue Quiñones, JQ, my man, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to have you here, brother.
I'm excited to be here, Stu. Thank you. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for inviting me, bro.
My honor, man. So to kick this thing off, let's give the audience kind of an inside look to what did life look like for you as you were growing up as a little kid? What was life like for little JQ?
Life for little JQ. So I was born and raised in the Hunts Point area, the South Bronx. Folks who may be familiar with that area know what it's like. I always, when I do presentations, I tell folks, if you've ever heard someone tell you, don't go to that neighborhood after a certain time of day, or don't go there by yourself, or if you go there, go with somebody that you know, that neighborhood is the neighborhood I grew up in. Now, it's not, it's not terrible, but there's reality there. And I was blessed. I grew up with two parents in my household. I'm Puerto Rican. And my parents were very strict and stern, and they were very big on discipline and education. And so they did a lot to keep us off of the streets. Whereas for us as kids, it was kind of like they cramping our style. They trying to control our lives and it's not cool. And, and so that's what it was like at home, and then for me growing up, like in school, to be honest, I was always the quiet kid in the class that wouldn't talk, which is ironic. But I was the quiet kid in the class that would never raise his hand. Even if I knew the answer to the question, I would not raise my hand. Even if I had a question, I would not raise my hand. I was very shy. I was very quiet. Self-conscious, hypervigilant. I got bullied a lot because of how I carried myself. I wasn't the strong guy. I wasn't the tough guy. I ain't like fighting. Like I wasn't trying to fight. It hurt. Like it hurt to get punched in the face. I wasn't trying to get punched in the face. So, and that was counter to what all the other kids around me, right? Like you had to be the tough guy. You had to be cool. And I was none of that. And so, I often felt like I was an outsider. I often felt othered. I often felt, sort of outcasted in some ways. Yeah.
So then as you kind of continue to go throughout your life, obviously you spend the first, 18 years of your life in this neighborhood, right? In this world. And obviously now you're still in New York, just a different part. But I'm curious for you, as you grew up, did you have an idea of, like goals, aspirations, things you wanted to do, or was it almost growing up saying like, I just want to make it out alive? Like, it sounds like it was an intense place you were growing up in.
Yeah. Again, because of my parents, they did their best to shelter us from a lot of that. We saw it, but we weren't directly in it, thankfully. And that's because our parents, they kept us in the house. We had to be home after a certain time. Like, and I had to page my mom back when pagers were a thing. Right. But like I had to page my mom, and then I had to call my dad at work to let him know and to let them know that we were home. And my mom would call the house to make sure, like, you home, you better not go nowhere, because I'll be home in like an hour. And so for me, I think I had dreams, I had aspirations, I had goals. What they were, it's funny. What they were, I don't entirely remember. I know my mom never lets me live this down. When I was in first grade, I told her I wanted to be the icy man. I wanted to be the guy that was, on the corner selling ices to all the kids and the people that came by after school.
Oh yeah.
And it's because they earned a lot of quarters. Right. So I guess that was like the first iteration of like my dream or my goal.
Yeah.
And I think over time it evolved to wanting to be a rapper, to wanting to be a singer, to eventually when I got to college, it was I wanted to be a businessman. I wanted to be in business. And so, it jumped around quite a bit. But I don't know that I had like one thing that was like, this is what I'm going to be when I get older. Like I'm so sure of it. Like it wasn't that.
Yeah. So when does social work come into play?
Man, that comes into play probably like my fourth. Yeah, I say about my fourth year in college. So I did 5 years of undergrad because I wasn't the best student.
Yeah,
Again, like I got to college and I thought that I knew what I wanted to do, right? I was like, oh, I'm gonna study
totally.
business, and because that's where the money is. And the whole point of going to college is so you can get a job and so you can make some money, especially, where I'm from. It's like, you got to make money. You got to get up out of here.
Yeah.
Because my parents, they were big on education. So it was like, that was the ticket out. And I said, okay, well, if I figure out a way to make money, I can get out of here.
Yeah.
So failed calc, failed it with flying colors.
Yeah.
And the F stood for flying colors, because that's literally what went by on the board with all like the derivatives and equations and whatever that stuff was. And I got to a really low place, because I tried business, that didn't work. Then I was like, oh, well, I'll shift to economics. That didn't work. And I was on the verge of failing out. I'd been at the school probably about 3 years at this point. I went to Binghamton University, and I was an undergrad for about 3 years, hadn't declared a major officially. GPA was below a 2.0. It was at a 1.6 specifically, lost financial aid.
Dang.
And it was like, yo, what am I doing? And I was like, I was lost, honestly, right? Because I went to college trying to fit in, trying to be somebody that I really wasn't because of my upbringing, in high school, in middle school, elementary school.
Yeah.
I always felt like the outsider. And so I was always trying to figure out where I belonged. And I carried that into college, not knowing that, right?
Right.
So I'm at this point and I'm like, all right, well, I got to figure out something. Business is not working. This economics thing is not working. Clearly, the whole point of being here is to get a degree. Yeah, but I'm trying to make some money. Like I got to make money. So if I could figure out a way to get to that and skip all these other steps, I'll be good, right? Like, makes sense. So I looked at, some of my friends back home, some of my friends that were currently in college with me. And I was like, yo, what they do doesn't seem that hard. And they look like they're doing pretty good for themselves. And so just by your reaction, I feel like you kind of got an idea. But I started to get involved with illegal substances, and specifically the sale of them. And I would argue I was relatively successful. I had money in my pocket. I could buy myself J's and put some, clothes on my back, and I could hang out with friends and stuff. And it just turned out to be a realization that who I became wasn't who I really believed myself to be. Right. And you ask, like, at that age, at a young age, did I have a vision or a goal for myself? It wasn't really clear, but in that time that I was involved in this lifestyle, it slowly became clear, right? Because I started having to watch over my back. I started having to, look over my shoulder. I lived with this paranoia that wasn't really what I imagined for myself. And I believe that every one of us has a vision of ourselves to some degree for our future, right? We may not have a specific occupation or specific goal, but I believe that to some degree we have a feeling or an understanding of who we want to be known as, what we want to be known for, or even who we are at our core, right? Like, I believe that. And so, long story short, I got to a point where I realized, like, yo, this is not adding up for me. Like, where I am and what I'm doing is not what I envisioned for myself. And I'm not proud of this. Like, my best friend didn't know I was doing that. My mom didn't know I was doing that. Like, the people that worked so hard to get me to where I was at that, up until that point, had no clue, And I remember my mom dead asking me in my face, like, are you doing drugs? And I'm like, no. Little does she know, right? But, I realized that I had a choice to make. And it was either continue this lifestyle and to endure whatever consequences, outcome, or results would come with it, or to reframe my lifestyle around something totally different, and what that would be, I didn't know. What it would look like, I didn't really know, but I just knew what I was currently doing wasn't it, because it didn't match who I really believed myself to be. And so I reached out and I asked someone for help, which is something that I hadn't done up until that point.
Yeah.
And so, I realized I wasn't the only one that would ever go through that experience, that has ever gone through that experience, that experience. And so if I could share my experience as a way to motivate someone else and to inspire them to understand that they can change their lives, then I wanted to do that. Right. And so I took one human development class at Binghamton, and it like blew my mind because it challenged the way that I viewed myself, the way that I understood the world, the way that I understood society. And it helped me to realize that since I was a kid, I've always had the question, why? Like I've always asked that. That was always a question. Like when I used to get bullied when at home, like that was always the question I asked. But why? Like, why is it that I can't do that? Why is it that they treat me like this? Why is it that they think this about me? Why is it that they act like that? And that class kind of helped me to start unpack that question for myself and even for the world around me. And
what were like the basic main takeaways you took from that, with it being so impactful in the human development?
Bro, basically that everything, which is where my message success as a lifestyle is like born from. It's everything that we are surrounded by, that we observe, that we witness, that we consume, that we hear, that we touch, everything impacts us and shapes the way that we view the world, the way that we see the world, the way that we walk through the world, the way that we think about and understand the world and ourselves in the world. And so everything from the neighborhood I grew up in, to the people I was around, to my family, to their family, right? And like the environment they came from and they grew up in, and how their parent, like all of that informs who I am today and continues to inform who I will be, because every day we're going through something, right? Positive, negative, and different. And it's shaping us. And I hadn't realized how much of who I was impacted and shaped by what I'd been through, what I'd experienced. And so that shaped, that still to this day is a very defining moment. And I'm so in love with that. Like, I love that, having those kind of conversations about that.
Yeah. So how do you think, like, let's say you have this realization and yet life still hasn't dealt you the cards of like, okay, everything around you shapes the way that you think, that you do, like your family, your experiences, it all shapes who you are. And let's say you're in that place and you're like, well, life still hasn't like given me the deck that's like the good deck. Like I still kind of got the shitty deck.
Right.
Like how can you start to shift some of those things? Maybe, not in like a 0 to 100 way, like everything changes, because everything is, if you really want to change it, it takes time. But how would you say is a way that you can start kind of shifting some of those things in the positive direction?
I think,
and maybe even how did you do it? Because you're proof.
Yeah. I think so. For me, I think at the base level is you have to see something outside of what's normal, right? Which I feel like there's layers to that, right? Because on one level, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Facts.
And so if something's normal to you, it's like, what else is there? This is life. There's nothing outside of this. What are you talking about, right? So I think on some level, you have to get exposed to something that's outside of what you're used to. Be it you intentionally seek something that's outside of what you're used to, or open yourself up to being exposed by someone else or something else to things that are other than what you're normal to, or what's normal to you, right? And so I think for me, some of that started because there was a counselor at the college who I identified with, right? He looked like me. He was also Latino. And I saw myself in him, or he sort of represented what I could be to some degree.
Yeah.
Like he was the cool guy. Everybody loved him, but he was also really like compassionate and he cared about people, so he wasn't just the cool guy. He actually cared about people, and so I felt a little comfortable talking to him out of all the people that I could have spoken to. And he's the first person that I reached out to. So I think at first you have to get exposed to something that's other than what you're used to. I think that's why representation matters, right? That's why it's important for us to have people who look like us, who talk like us, who sound like us, who walk like us, dress like us in certain places and spaces, because they represent what's possible. So I think that's like at the base level, and I'm trying not to get too layered, but I think the next real actionable step is you got to ask for help. You got to ask for help. Like, that's what changed. That's what started the domino effect for me. Was I realized where I was and the fact that it wasn't adding up, and I reached out to one person, and it happened to be that counselor. I called them and I was like, yo, I need help. Like, I have no clue what I'm doing. Here's what's going on. Here's what's been happening. Here's what I'm thinking. What can I do? And then follow through, because he literally gave me steps. He was like, okay, call this person, tell them what you told me, and we're going to go from there. And, one thing led to the next, and, that person gave me instructions, and I followed those instructions. And so, I think it's first you have to see something other than what you used to, which I think can create inspiration and aspiration in you. And then you got to ask for help, because you got to put in a lot of work, but you're not going to entirely do it on your own.
Totally. And I think even like a few things that are so important in that too is it's like finding a role model in some way, shape, or form. Like if like they say that where there is no vision, the people perish, and it's like in a simple sense, straight up, right? And it's like. In a real sense, it's like if you don't have a role model of someone that you go, well, I could be like this, and not that you're trying to be them, but like a forward direction you can go, and you go, that person's, like you said, such an important thing, looks like me, dresses like me, like I can relate to them, I can see myself in them. And if you have someone like that, it's so much easier to like take some of these forward steps because it's possible.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's like when I do my success as a lifestyle program, that you gotta think yourself into it, right? You have to have the vision for it, and because if you don't see it, how is it possible, right? What are you talking about? Never saw that.
You won't. If you can't, it's like they say everything in this world is created twice. The first time it's in the mind, the second time it's in the real world. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like the microphone that both of us are speaking in, someone created this in their mind first, and now we're creating, and now we're talking into it, and
oh my God, yes, like literally everything was once an idea. Like everything. We're sitting, we're watching, we're touching, like everything around us is somebody's idea, right? Like the rooms we're in, we're sitting in somebody's idea, right? Like it's wild.
It's a trip. And I think another thing that's like so important too is it's like getting whatever's going on in your head out.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's so easy to go, these things are in my head, and we just get kind of in this like crazy inner battle in our mind that obviously, like if we had the solution, we would not be having the battle in our mind, but we think, I'm going to figure it out. I can do this. I can get there. But the reality is, like you said, whether it's a role model or someone else, if you can reach out and just kind of throw these ideas by somebody, or even if you're not quite even ready for that, like take out a notepad and write it down and just allow yourself to like separate yourself from these things that are in your head.
Yep.
Like all of those things are so necessary to kind of put yourself in that forward direction from kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to put in work, right? You got to take some sort of action step. And even write it down, make it plain, right? Like that's from the Bible again. Like you got to put the vision down, make it plain. You got to write it down, but I agree. For me, the biggest thing is asking for help, which is the hardest thing sometimes. That's the hardest thing because of pride, but because of a bunch of different things, but I always tell people there's an army behind me. You just can't see them because they're not physically present right now.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Straight up, man. So then now you have this shift in life. You go, okay, I reached out to this guy. He's starting to help you in life. And this is when I'm assuming you start to go, okay, social worker, I can help people. It's in human development. And is that kind of how that track starts to become a reality?
Yeah, that's essentially what happened. You know, I reached out to him. I saw his role and what he was doing, and I was like, that's a job I would love to do. It would allow me to share my story and impact people who are in the exact same position or similar one to me. And so I asked him how he got to where he wanted to be. He gave me some ideas, some steps. I connected with professors along the way, and I was thinking about working in higher ed. And so doing my own research, I came across one major, which was higher ed. And then I spoke to a professor and he's like, well, what is it you want to do? And I'm like, I want to be a counselor. And he said, well, you thought about social work? And I was like, nah, I don't even know what that is. So he was like, do some research. So I looked it up and I was like, oh. And then again, he's like, okay, do me a favor, talk to this person. And then I go, I meet with that person. And it was the director of admissions for the social work program at Binghamton. And after that one meeting, I was like, yeah, I'm applying for this. You know, and so, yeah, that's kind of how it happened. I literally followed instruction.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, when you like ask for help, people will give you those instructions. People will give you guidance. But the second step is like acting on it, right? Someone goes, oh, try this thing, do that thing. I think a lot of the time we go, okay, yeah, it was a great conversation. We go back to our normal life. It's like, well, no, you want things to change. You got to change. You want things to be different. You got to do something different. So, so then, you know, obviously you go into this path of doing social work. How does eventually, I mean, now you're speaking all over the world. So how do you go from social worker to keynote speaker?
Yeah. Really, so how it happened was after graduate school, I was a resident director at Binghamton. So I was a hall director. And I was on a committee that was in charge of selecting the RAs. So the student staff who oversee the other students that live in the building and help build community and stuff like that. So I was on a committee that's responsible for putting together the application process. We're doing a presentation to explain the process. And it's like 5 or 6 of us. I don't remember how many doing a presentation. And when it comes my turn for my slides, right, I have to explain the step-by-step process. Just like the overview. And so I say, all right, y'all, my name is, Josué, JQ Quiñones. And I'm here to explain the process for applying to be an RA. So the first step is you have to attend a session just like this. So why don't y'all give yourselves a round of applause for completing the first step? The whole room starts applauding. And I was kind of like, oh, interesting. So they stopped clapping and I'm like, I just wanted to see how much control you would let me have over you. So thank you for indulging me. I appreciate that. The whole room starts laughing. And I was like, wait a minute, there's something here, and so I got so into the presentation that I even took one of my colleagues' slides. Like I was just going through it and I was like, oh, wait, this is not even my slide.
Yeah.
And I looked back and he was like, go ahead, just finish it. And I was like, all right, cool. And it was just so much fun, to see that I could impact an audience, and the only message I had was how to apply to be an RA, right? But I made it fun. They laughed, right? And so for me, it was like, damn, what if I could do this and move them in a positive way and share something with them that's impactful and powerful that could change their life, or save someone's life. And that's kind of how it started. Again, I told someone about it, reached out to a fraternity brother who does it professionally and was like, yo, man, I've been thinking about this. What should I do? What are your thoughts? He was like, all right, well, here's what I think you should start doing first. Here's some ideas. Here's some things. And, I did that. I did what he told me, literally, and then just told people, a lot of the engagements that I've gotten, to be honest, have been people that know me, that I've worked with, or they referred me, like someone I work with is like, oh, you should reach out to JQ. And then they reach out to me. So yeah, that's basically how it happened. I was like, yo, I get to impact people in a sort of a different way. And it took me back to this performative aspect. Because growing up, music was an outlet for me. That was the one place where I felt like my voice wasn't silenced, And so growing up, even younger years, like in high school and then in college, I performed a couple times here and there as part of a group that me and my friends were in. And which is ironic because I was still the kid in the classroom that wouldn't raise his hand, but then I'm on stage, performing it. But
Yeah.
it took me back to that. And so I was like, yo, man, nah, there's something here. I got to do this. I got to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Someone once told me that, if you look at like DJs, for example, one of the coolest parts as I observe, I'm not, I don't like go to raves and that's not my thing.
Yeah.
But it's like the amount of control a DJ has over someone's emotions in the audience. Like they want them to feel ecstatic.
Yep.
They can play this song or this chord. If they want them to feel like a deep thing, then they can play this chord. And I feel like as a speaker, you do have a sense of that, where it's like you have this room and you can kind of beautifully orchestrate the energy and the emotions that they go through. And if you have a beautiful message you can tie to that, it's like the experience you get to create for people is like, it's like nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That energy and the ability to kind of, to, for lack of a better word, to manipulate it, but in a positive way, right? Because I think manipulation has a bad connotation. But to be able to massage it, to move it, bro, it's like dancing almost.
It is like
just
dancing,
in a very different.
real.
Yes, absolutely. It's nothing like it. It's nothing like it.
Yeah. So, what would you say? Obviously, you're talking to a lot of people that are in these phases of their life where they're trying to figure out their life. What would you say is like a common piece of guiding advice you give to people that are searching for direction in their life?
I think the one and there's two things. The first is you got to really understand yourself deeply. You have to understand yourself deeply, right? And what I mean by that is it's important for us to explore our stories, right? Where did we come from? How did we get there? How did we get to where we are now, right? It's that question, why? Why am I here, right? And why am I here? Not necessarily in a forward-thinking way, right? Of like, why am I here? Well, I'm here because this is where I'm trying to go. Why am I here? As in, what are all the things that have happened before that have gotten me here, right? What's everything that's happened to me or even before me that have led to me being present in this very moment? Because it shaped you. And to some degree, it shapes where you want to go, right? And it calls into question why you even want to go in that direction, right? What's the purpose? Why are you trying to go in that direction? What is it really about, or what is it really for? And so I think that's kind of the first step, is to really understand ourselves deeply. And then next is you got to ask somebody for help. Find, this is something one of my mentors told me. There's at least one person on this planet that is currently doing or has already done what you are aiming to do. At least one. There's at least one.
For sure.
Find that person and ask them, yo, how did you get to where you are? Because I'm thinking of doing something similar, if not the same, literally.
Yeah.
And 99, I believe 99.9% of the time, they're more than willing to share that with you and willing to tell you how to do it better than they did so that you don't make the same mistakes. Right. And if you find the 0.1%, maybe they were just in a bad mood, or maybe they're just not the right person to ask, but if I'm being honest, that's how I've gotten to where I am. I'm constantly and consistently exploring myself. And whenever I've thought about doing something or trying something new, or going in a different direction, I go and ask somebody, or I try to find my way to put myself in a position where I can get access to someone who is doing that, right? Because I might not have the access. Okay, so, what reverse engineer is, some people say, think backwards. All right, so who's the closest person to that? What's one step before that? Who do I need to talk to that's a step before that, or a couple steps before that, so that I can get closer to the person that I really am trying to get access to? And you'd be surprised.
Yeah, for real. People, if you ask, people will give you an answer. And what would you say is one thing you do to deeply understand yourself on a deep level? Like, are you someone who journals? Do you believe in like doing a meditation? Do you seek out guidance from other people? Like, what would you say is one thing that you do when you're like, I want to understand myself at a deeper level?
Yeah.
Like, what does that
So
look like?
it's funny you asked for one because I do all of those things. But so music is therapy for me, right? And it always has been, and it still is. You know, music is therapeutic. It was an outlet for me, and it still is. It's one place that I find my voice is most unfiltered. And so that was the start of it. You know, it then evolved to journaling, and then it evolved to counseling. You know, I go to therapy once a week, you know, and that has opened my eyes in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I encourage folks to do what works for them, right? Because I didn't always go to therapy. That wasn't my thing. I didn't do that, especially the culture I grew up in. You don't do that. You don't talk to people about your problem. What are you talking about? Therapy is for crazy people, which is ridiculous.
For real.
And so, you know, do what works. If writing songs works, do that. If exercise works, do that. If going for a run works, do that. If meditation works, do that. You know, find what works for you. And as you grow and as you evolve, you may recognize that certain things work in certain times and in certain situations. You know, so I journal. You know, I like to have tea in the morning. I'm a morning person. So in the morning, you know, I make a cup of tea and I read, you know, and then I'll journal about what I read, or I'll journal about, you know, what happened the day before, or I'll journal about what I'm feeling in the moment. I go to therapy, as I said, and music, you know, music. Sometimes I just have this burning desire to write a song about how I'm feeling. And as long as I find the right piece of music, that thing just flows out of me and it feels so good. It's almost like I'm discovering the song as I write it. It's beautiful.
That's epic, man. And I think part of it too is just like do something, right? You're never gonna know what the right outlet is for you if you don't start playing around with it. So lot of good tools you gave us on different ways, but I would agree. Like I think in figuring out your life and finding direction, it's like you really do need to learn yourself on a ridiculously deep level, you know, because if you're wandering around life and you don't even know who you are, it's going to be so much harder to get to where you want to go because you don't even know the person who's trying to get to where the heck, who knows where you're going. You know what I mean? It's like, it just adds another problem to this equation. It's like, now you're doing more calculus and you're like, this is life calculus. It makes it more difficult.
Yeah, no, you know, and two things jumped out as I was listening to you, one of which is we have to sit with ourselves. We have to, right? Because a lot of the times we can, right? Action is important, but sometimes action can be mindless and unintentional. And we could just go to this, I think this is the answer. I think this is the answer. This might be the answer. This might be the answer. And it's like, why are you even going to all those things? Like, what is it that you're searching for right now? Right. And that's why I think you have to go within, because it helps you to understand what you're searching for. What is it that you're looking for? And why are you looking for that? Where did that desire come from? You know? So that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is also, you do have to take action and you do have to take a step forward, because it's kind of like a tunnel, right? When you go in a tunnel, there's a light at the other end and you may not see it until you get halfway through. Right?
Yeah.
But if you don't try to at least get even a third, a fourth, a fifth, a eighth, a tenth of the way through, you won't see the door that's to the right in that tunnel. That could lead to something else. Or you might see that door and you'd be like, no, that ain't it. And you keep going to this thing. And then there's another door on the left. And it's like, oh, wait, hold on. Right. And that's kind of how it's been for me. Right. It wasn't a straight path. It was, I think I'm going to do this. Okay. I've done that. I like that, but that's not where I want to stay. So I move on to the next, you know, I had two, I took probably like 2-3 different paths professionally before I became a speaker, you know? And so, you got to move forward, because that's where you'll start to see the different roads that you could potentially take, and you can always come back, right? Like you can go down that road and say, nah, I'm gonna go back to where I was headed initially. And that's okay.
Facts. Yeah. Try it's 100 million%. Try it. If you don't like it, go back to what you were doing before. It's like, I think sometimes we get caught up in our head. We go, well, if I leave or if I do this, then I can't go back. It's like, nah, you can try things, and then you say that's not it. You can go back to the other thing. And sometimes doing that makes you more certain now that when you go back to the other thing, you're like, okay, now I really know this is, I thought it wasn't it. And I tried that other thing, but I'm really sure this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yep. Absolutely.
Heck yeah, man. So, Josué, I mean, if people want to get more info on you, see what you're up to, I know you're doing a lot. Where is the best place for us to point people?
Absolutely. So 2 places. One is my website, www.successisalifestyle.com. You can find everything about me there. And on social media, I'm at JosueJQUinones. That's literally my name. So at JosueJQ, I'm probably the first one that'll pop up by the time you get that far.
Yeah. And we'll put that in the show notes so everybody has it as well. And so last question I have for you is, we want to help people find direction, but we do believe in doing it through, you gotta move, you gotta do something, whether it's mental action or physical action. And so I would be curious, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
One thing they can do in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Exactly. To start finding direction.
Yeah. Ask yourself why. Literally sit with yourself and ask yourself why. And just go. Just go. I do that as part of my program. I get everybody to take out a piece of paper or write on their phone, put why at the top of the notes. And I want you to answer that question and just write everything. Don't think too much. Just keep writing and see what comes out, because
I love that.
You'll reveal yourself to yourself.
Yeah. And it's very, you leave it very open. It's not like why this, why that, it's just why. And then your brain will take you in the direction that you need to go.
Yep. And do not, whatever you do, oh my God, whatever you do not answer, I do not know, because you've given yourself an answer and your brain will stop. Serious. No, I mean that, because that happens.
Yeah.
Right. The moment you say, I don't know, you've answered the question, but you've given yourself an unfulfilled answer. So whatever you do not say, I do not know, because you've cut yourself off before you've even gotten started, And so, yeah.
Love that, man. Well, thank you for giving that, because I'm sure some people would listen to it and they go, I don't know. So don't do that. Right, don't say, exactly. I don't know. And yeah, it does. It shuts off your brain. And if you ask why, like I always tell people, questions are one of the most powerful things in our life. And if you ask yourself a question often enough, consistently, with intensity, eventually your brain goes, all right, you really want to know the answer? Boom. And that's where the gold comes.
Seek and you shall find.
Seek and you shall find. Well, Josué, my man, this has been an honor to have you here, brother. Such a good conversation, and thank you for bringing so much value today.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. Thank you. This has been fun.
Hell yeah, man.